Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sports Speak. My name is Tim Moore, and today I have a special guest alongside for episode 8 of Daniel Buttafuoco, who participates in the Nascar Heat Pro League. Now, initially, we were trying to work things out for Monday. Things didn't work out. You had to talk to a couple people, but I'm glad to have you here on this Thursday. And I do want to mention one thing as well. Eddie will be back with us on Monday with more sports debate for Sports Speak. But, Dan, I want to start with this. Auto Club, just the other day, you had a strong car. You come out and you pick up your third victory on the season. First off, how are you feeling about that?
It still feels really good. I mean, it's been 2 days since the race happened, and it just still feels really good. It's, as always, massive thank you to Germain Racing, Geico for allowing me to be a part of the team, Kyle Arnold and Scout Bunk for all their help, getting me acclimatized to the track. I learned a lot. Our setups were pretty similar to start off with, but then it was just little adjustments, and that made me much better. So week started rough. I kind of messed up qualifying, a little bit of nerves, to be honest. Just I'm not much of a qualifying person. I'm more of a guy who likes to run multiple laps over a long distance. I'm more of an endurance racer, so it's something I'm not quite used to still, but still seventh is pretty good. And then took it one lap at a time, fell back to around 9th or 10th, and then we just raced our way up through the field first and led a lot of laps in the race. Car was working really good. I was super motivated, super hyped in the race. As you can see, made some pretty good moves. I'll be honest, I was super excited the whole race. That was crazy. I think that's probably the best race, or one of the best races I've ever ran. Just everything went to plan, and yeah, it was really good to get the Geico car for the third win of the season. I got to spend some time with the family last night, or yesterday, I should say, and so that was a really good thing. But honestly, it was just a really, really awesome race. Just another thing too, it's an oval. Our first 2 wins are on road courses, so there's a lot of self pressure to make sure that we got an oval, just to prove to people that we aren't a road course ringer. We're not like Boris said, or those guys that just wanted to win an oval, and finally did it. So that's a lot of pressure off my shoulders. 3 wins is better than 2. So yeah, just very happy.
Now, I do have to ask, going into the final corner, rather in turn 3 of the final lap, is that what you wanted to see behind you, them going 3 wide so that you got a clear run to the start-finish line? Or, I mean, what was your mindset going into that final corner? Because all I thought is the 88 was going to dive bomb it, and it was going to be mayhem all the way to the line.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad he didn't. It's good, clean racing there, and respected him. I appreciate that. I wanted it to be a good, clean race, and it was the front for the most part. Everyone raced pretty clean, I think, towards the front. So yeah, that was definitely what I wanted to see. If anything, I really wanted to see myself start to pull some distance off of 2. I didn't expect Slade to really maintain a good exit off of 2, and he did. So at that point, I was a little worried. So I went defensive into 3. I didn't want to block anyone through ridiculous blocks. I went defensive, drove a different line, and then once I had a really good corner, at that point I kind of knew if we kept the foot to the floor, we had this thing won. So yeah, that was probably one of the best things I could have seen, coming off of 4. So that just really made the situation much easier. So I was going crazy.
And would you say overall, in terms of how the race went, obviously we know Auto Club in NASCAR being a bigger draft kind of track, I mean, how different though in terms of the feel from Atlanta? Because I know Atlanta was mostly on the bottom, but it seemed like you found yourself in the middle lane, making up some ground throughout most of that race.
Yeah, Auto Club's a track where you can use a lot of lanes. Obviously, the bottom lane's a faster one if you're by yourself running the course. So you typically want to be on the bottom lane, but you can honestly, when you're holding a tighter line, entering the corner, and you're forced to run the bottom, it kind of hurts you a bit. So sometimes if I'm running all the way against the wall and then arcing out very high, running the middle line or so, or running the higher top line, it could help you, honestly. And I think if you look back on the broadcast, you look at my car, you can probably see some moves I made. I think I made one on Diego to start. I used that line and then did a switchback on Mordog, and I made I consider a power move on Justin Brooks there for the lead. That was that was crazy. So the middle lane was definitely in full force. So it was good to see that lane working. I was expecting more guys to use it, but um, I just felt really comfortable. I practiced it a lot in the practice sessions we've been doing, and just have enough racing experience around the track to know that line works. And it really helped me out there. Experience in the bottom lane. I wasn't as good in the bottom lane when I was side by side with guys because the car would push up a little bit. But yeah, the middle line really worked for us really well.
Now, before we talk more about the season, I do want to get a little bit into your history. Obviously, now this is your second year in the pro league, but obviously, we race together a lot now, and you've talked about this in the past. But for those that don't know, you obviously being in season one with Gibbs Gaming didn't necessarily turn out to the kind of year you wanted to be. You went winless last year, but you always felt that your potential wasn't hit and that you could prove it this season. But going in the transition from NASCAR Heat 3 to Heat 4, could you ever have imagined that you would have the success that you are having today back then?
Never. I always believed that with the hard work can get you good results. I always preach hard work for everything. That's why, in school, for example, I was always the kid who would study the hardest. I feel I wasn't one of those kids who go into the exam not studying, get an A. I was not that kind of guy. I'm the guy who always has to put the hard work in and really just get the job done. Not to say that I didn't put the hard work in last season. I did put a lot of work last season, but just the lack of experience, I think, was the biggest thing. Lack of experience of setups in the NASCAR racing community kind of hurt me there. But then, at that point, I was a little down on myself. Didn't have the season one I wanted, but you got to have a good positive mindset. I told myself, I could do this. I believe in myself. It won't be easy, but I think over time, if I teach myself how to, race against guys a little bit better, know a little bit better racecraft, learn about how the car setups work, what works for me personally, because that's pretty important. Working on, what suits your driving style, and then over time, it's just the event of progression, slow progression. It's baby steps. It's never flick of the switch. So it was a lot of hard work to get there, and just I never really could imagine that. It's pretty crazy. Everyone was hyping me up preseason. I think eSpark season one, the time trials, a lot of guys put a lot of expectations on me, and I appreciated it, but I really didn't feed into it. I just kind of had I wouldn't say tunnel vision mentality, because it's not good to have a tunnel vision. You want to be pretty, you want to look around in a sense, but I just kind of ignored all the hype comments, I guess. I appreciated it, but you don't want it to get in your head in a sense. So, I try to keep myself grounded. I feel like I'm not try to not be, I don't really see the point bragging about stuff or being arrogant about it, gloat about things. So I just had to keep it cool, calm, collected composure. And, I guess I've meeting expectations. So, 3 wins has been pretty good. So, it's been surreal. Just, I can't believe it. And, hope to get some more wins left in the season, and hopefully season 3. If I'll be back for season 3, it'll be a really good one too.
Well, I think the most important one that you didn't mention as well, you're going to be racing for a championship in a couple of weeks. But again, I do want to focus as well towards your past. Also, what not a lot of people know about you, I know NASCAR Heat released the Know Me Better series with both you and Red, I believe last week, if I'm not mistaken, between Germain Gaming in particular. Yeah. But they didn't really mention your background as well, if I'm not mistaken, with F1 prior to NASCAR. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so my league racing career has been a very interesting one for sure. So my first ever league actually was on the PlayStation 3. So this is 2015. So this is before my birthday. My birthday is 2 days before Christmas, by the way. So I was 14 and raced on NASCAR 15 because that was the last NASCAR old gen game. So I raced a few races there, won 2 races, I think. And then I wanted to get Xbox because Forza was appealing, and I was always had an interest in the F1 league races because there was a league called Apex Online Racing, AOR for short. They always uploaded their league races from Xbox, and that was the top of the crop league racing. Those are the best guys. They got a lot of great exposure on top of that too, but it was just competitive. So for me, if I could get an Xbox and race against some of those guys, that would be huge. And got an Xbox One for Christmas. Got the new F1 2015 game for the new gen. And got it much later than everyone else because at that time that game released in July, which was a very early release for F1. That was the first time they released it on July. And so I was about 5 months, 6 months behind everyone else. So I had a lot to learn. And at that time, I was still learning no assists. At that time, it's a big controversy in F1, traction control, ABS. I already had that stuff down, but I was on the racing line, still a whole bunch of stuff that I can go into. So then I started to slowly join some leagues, and I started to pretty grasp the game pretty fast, honestly. My first ever league, championship league, won the championship. Then I raced in another league called CRL, got third there. Probably could have got second, but that was also missing the first 2 races, I think. So that was pretty big. And then I made it to AOR that fast, tier 1, boom. And I raced against future F1 esports, 2-time esports champion Brendan Lee.
Wow.
And he was really fast. He was in his own zip code. He was so fast. I don't know how he does it. I tried my hardest, and I just could not get quite to his level. One race I did get close to him in Austria. I was on him, and then he just flew away to past few stints. So, but he missed a few races, though. So I did win 2 races. So I am a 2-time AOR F1 winner in the top tier league. So that's something I still am proud of. I was around 15 years old then. We went to F1 2016, and just that wasn't as good of a game. The competition increased massively, and just over time things didn't. I was really trying, and I just couldn't get the grips of F1. And over time, I decided to go to Project Cars 2. So I mean, it's been a pretty big journey. Project Cars 2 had some pretty good success there, but then I had the older gen Xbox, and apparently there was a glitch with the game where that would almost shake your wheel. Everything would go nuts. So really that area of esports, I was actually in an esports team there, EVR, back in the old days. So EVR, and then things didn't seem to work out there, and then I decided, let's go back to NASCAR Heat. The rest is history. So it's been a pretty crazy journey for myself. I'm not just a NASCAR esports driver, but I'm pretty passionate about esports and racing in general. So I guess that's where all the road course experience comes in handy. But at the same time, I was doing NASCAR around then, not as heavily, but I've always been a big fan of the NASCAR franchise. I love their games. I think they're incredible, and that's why I'm continuing to race here in NASCAR Heat 4 and going to NASCAR Heat 5.
Now, what would you say is the major difference? Obviously, other than the difference of tracks being an F1, you're always at road courses. But what would you say the major difference is when it came to making setups and such between F1 and NASCAR Heat?
Oh, I forgot to add another thing, too. So it was not just Brendan Lee I raced with. I raced against Saleh Tibur Saltunch, Sonnet C. Saltunch, James Doherty, also known as Tyrell Limitless. He was my teammate in one season. He did some F1 esports. Bunch of other guys who did F1 esports as well. So it was a lot of other guys. That was pretty. These are future esports guys. It was crazy. But in terms of setups, I'm trying to remember. So in F1, there was a point in time when you couldn't change gears, which is great. So the gears are all the same for everyone. You could change aerodynamics. On every game, you could change aero, and there was a few games, I think it was 2016 or 2017 when it started, you could change the ballast on the car. So there were certain things where if you maxed the ballast, you'd be so fast through high-speed corners. And I think on the recent F1 games, they took ballast away because it was such a big exploit. There was camber, front and rear camber. There was toe of the tires you could change. The suspension stuff, and I'm trying to remember some other things. There was suspension, and I think there were shocks too. I mean, I don't think it was so in-depth as the NASCAR Heat stuff. The NASCAR Heat stuff you really have to, study, but the F1 stuff, it's a little easier to learn setups because in time trial you can download the setup that person used, albeit it's time trial, so you're going to have to change some stuff to adjust it for a 50% race, which I had no idea at the time. So that's something I wanted to go back on and have to learn. But there was definitely some more. It's honestly, it's pretty difficult to compare because F1 is F1. It's open wheel. There's a lot of elements of F1 that you really can't compare with stock cars because stock cars are stock. F1 cars are so technologically advanced. Because, like, for example, F1, you have ERS, a whole bunch of other stuff. Oh, differential, like differential on, differential off. That's another thing, too. So, I mean, it's pretty much apples to oranges, but there's definitely a lot of stuff. I really didn't understand the setups then, and really didn't understand car setups until I really got into NASCAR heat. So, it's been a difficult climb, but I don't know how much of it probably we could compare because of, ovals, road courses, and it being a stock car. So.
And now F1 was a lot more sliders as well, correct? In the old games, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So yeah, imagine like, in the preset bar and it's just a little tab, it's like that, but for every setting, I think.
So another thing that not a lot of people know about you as well, is not a problem, don't worry about it. But another thing that not a lot of people know about you as well is that you also don't, or I should say, haven't ever raced on controller. You're a straight up wheel guy. You're a wheel man as it is. What was the first time where, I guess, obviously F1, I would assume, or maybe NASCAR 15, but when was the first time when you actually picked up a wheel in terms of a e-racing game?
Wow. So it's going to be pretty crazy. So I've always loved NASCAR. It's been my number one sport. So my first game was a NASCAR game. So going back, this was PlayStation 3. I was a PlayStation guy then. And that's when it first came out when I was 7 years old. NASCAR 08, my parents bought me a wheel then. And we didn't, that was back when we had a recliner chair. I'd sit down. We take a lunch table, clamp it down, put the pedals underneath, and then just go racing. So I was 7 years old then. I really didn't take it that serious because when you're 7, you really don't quite understand video gaming as much. So, obviously, at some points I was by myself. I didn't race online until I was like 14, like I said. So I was racing against AI. I would either wreck them or all that. But then I was around 11. I started 9 or 10. I take it more serious, try and learn the tracks. But then it was around 13, 14 when I started taking all the assists off, like traction control, ABS, racing line, all that stuff, automatic gears. I take all that off. That's when I started taking more serious around 13, 14 years old. So yeah, that's pretty much how I started it.
See, it's funny because when I go back into my past, I think about when I was young and I had NASCAR Thunder 2002, and I had one of the old PS2 wheels that Dale Jr. used to like advertise for, and they were awesome. But it creates some good memories. But I always wondered too, like as a kid, like you had all these extra buttons and you just didn't understand it going in terms of to a controller. And I would imagine too, NASCAR 15, when you got to that era, was a little bit tougher because wheel wasn't really compatible back then as well. So that would have been very sensitive. But I also do want to mention also one thing as well. You did mention about gears back when we were talking about F1. Obviously, I know we're not getting into the depths of NASCAR Heat 5, but NASCAR Heat 5's just released. And in particular with custom setups, for those that do know, they've locked fourth gear down at a 1.0 differential. Do you think this is going to really change up the game when you guys transition over of how setups are made? And is this a great future for NASCAR Heat?
I think it definitely would change things up a bit because, obviously there's different rear end ratios that we use, and we kind of use that to help us with our third or fourth gear differential. So it'll definitely change things up a bit when it's locked to a 1. In terms of that gear was used always a fuel gear, so that's going to be different for sure. And I think it'll definitely change things up a bit. Allow guys to kind of experiment with different gears itself. See what a good all-around ratio is for some good speed and, good fuel mileage. So I think it'll definitely it's going to be an optimistic look in the future for NASCAR Heat.
So now you also mentioned the future. I do want to start focusing towards the future now. So we already mentioned you've won your third race on the year, and you're well on your way. You won the second segment. You're going along with Justin Brooks, Brandon Gritton, and Maxwell Castro to race for the championship at a track to be determined. I mean, first off, how do you feel about getting the opportunity to race for a championship, let alone obviously, I mean, last year with there being team championships and such, but it's got to be an incredible feeling after a long segment too.
It absolutely is. It's everything you work for. When doesn't matter what I'm racing, but especially here, you want to be champion. It's just it's the ultimate prize. It's what you work for. So it means the world to me, and it's all thanks to everybody from Germain Racing and Geico for supporting me and allowing me to be part of their team. And as always, Kyle Arnold for believing in me. Me, his teammate, and Scout Blanc as well for all his help they've given me along the way, and family and friends who have been supporting me through this journey. It's just a lot of great people. It's a people sport. Esports is a people sport too. You got the teams are behind you, and got a lot of friends on top of it, and my family's been super supportive through it. So it's been pretty crazy. First segment, I think we had a really good shot too. The fuel mileage came in, so that was a bummer, and then to kind of back that up in segment two to really end off strong and almost win Atlanta. So that was just a cherry on top. So, and keeping this momentum moving forward, just even though we're locked in, I come into every race with one goal, and that's to win. So I want to keep that up as best I can. So just really incredible.
And now moving forward through segment three, you have two good racetracks, I would say, for you as well. You have Road America coming up, in which you've already won the first two road course races on the regular season. And then you also have Las Vegas, which is a multi-groove track. But based upon this season, we've seen that you're not afraid to run the middle and highland. So I would imagine you're going to be real static to see those tracks coming towards the end of the segment, and perhaps even having a chance to dictate your future in terms of the wild card race.
Yeah, I mean, when people ask me about that, but honestly, I'm not having any goals in terms of like who comes in, who comes out. That strategy, I'm not really into it. I'm just trying to win as many races as I can. I want to win this segment, of course, because just for, it just looks good on paper. So, and it's good for the team too. Like I said, the team and the sponsor, Germain and Geico, just look good for them to kind of give them some more publicity. It's just all about, being a part of the team, just trying to win more because I love winning. I mean, who doesn't? So, Road America, like you said, it's road course has been very kind to me. And Road America is a stronger track of mine, I feel, in terms of the road courses, but I still anticipate it to be a very closely matched race at the front with Brooks, Zader, and Walker. So I anticipate it to be pretty close up there towards the front. So, but I still would like to win it. I think we have a good shot. We have a strong car already. Las Vegas is a track that has been good to me, I feel. I look back in other leagues like East Park. We finished 5th there, but we led a lot of laps, and me and Brooks were at the front for all of that race. So the car worked good there. I'm going to try some different stuff. But, yeah, it should be a good track. Hopefully it's all about track position again. It's going to be another draft track. So it's going to be similar to Auto Club, but it's going to be very bumpy too. So much bumpier, I think, than Auto Club. So that's going to be hard to get used to. So going to get used to that. It's been a while since I raced there. So try and get acclimatized to that track a little bit. So just hoping that everything goes to plan the next 2 races, and then try and have fun a wild card race. Try and win there at Daytona. So just trying to do everything I can to make sure that we're in position to win and try and keep winning.
Now, for the championship, is there a style of track you'd prefer to see? Obviously, we don't know what's to come, but is there an exact preference you would love to see as an ideal scenario?
Well, I mean, I love a road course. I mean, that'd be great, but preferably not a restrictor plate. I think everybody agrees with that. It's kind of out of your control. So preferably not a restrictor plate track. That would just be tough on everyone. It'd be kind of a lottery for everyone. So preferably not a restricted plate. I'd be down for 1.5 mile, 2 mile tracks. Obviously, draft's going to be a big play, but I think even if we have a strong car, we'll be trending towards the front. So, and, a short track would be good. We've been strong with short tracks, I feel. I think New Hampshire, they're not technically a short track, but, we've been strong. We led the most laps in New Hampshire. We should have won the race, I feel, but the fuel mileage again. And Dover, we had a really strong car there. I don't really think we're that strong in Iowa. We got second. Those tracks, I think we've just been really, strong. Any track other than a restricted plate, will be good. So I think that'll be good for us. But just going to need a lot of luck and, just need a good track position, and I think we'll be okay.
Now, one last question before we wrap things up. You've talked about earlier on about your family and such. I mean, how much of an impact has your family had on this, being your number one supporters every single day throughout this process? Because, I mean, you talk about family a bunch. And by the way, how's your grandma doing as well? Because is she recovering well?
Yeah, she's recovering well. Yes, so she's yesterday I was at her house. Actually, the past 2 days I was at her house, and celebrated the victory with her and my grandpa, and we got to go in the pool, and she was walking around in the pool. So it's good exercise for her, especially since she's trying to get back to making sure she can walk much better. So yeah, she's been doing much better, and family's very important. As we all know, the pandemic has been pretty tough on everyone. You really can't get to see your friends as much anymore, your close family relatives, but they're about 20 minutes away, so 20, 30 minutes away, so we can drive over there and talk with them and talk about everything, just have some good family bonding experience. So it definitely helps for sure. It's good. I just feel really happy in a family. They love you for a reason. They're always behind your back 100%. My mom and my dad have been the biggest supporters ever. When you see me climb up out of my chair, I'm literally hugging my parents. So, my grandma and grandpa have been, really supportive through this. My aunt, who comes, once in a while to grandma's house. So just, it's very important to me to spend some more time with them. It's because, times like these won't last forever. So, really important for me to do that. And just lost my train of thought there, but yeah, it's just really good because I'm a pretty quiet guy for the most part with family, so it's just good to spend some time and talk about life or whatnot, talk about funny stories and talk about what's good, because they really honestly, I gotta say this, they really are into my whole esports thing, which is great. So my grandpa, he has a few brothers. They've been calling him, how's the esports going? How's Lucky Dog? They're calling me Lucky Dog now instead of Dan. So, a whole bunch of that stuff. Even family members from Indiana, like my great uncle, who's my grandma's brother, watches the races. And then my second cousin from Texas watches it, and family members from New York are watching it. So all around America, they're watching the races. So it's really, really big. To me, it means a lot to me. So it's probably the best thing, you could do. Celebrating these accomplishments with family is probably the best thing you could do. Probably the best way to celebrate. So it's means a lot to me.
So I think it's safe to say that if you do go on to win the championship, the first thing you're doing is getting out of your seat and giving your parents a big hug and kiss and celebrating.
Absolutely. I do that every time we win. You see, that's when I'm getting out of the chair. That's the thought I had with my parents. So I'll definitely be celebrating with the family for sure.
And one last question to mention. Do you know if they're giving a trophy this year, like a physical trophy to the champion, or no?
I don't know. For me, just winning, if we could win the championship, that would just be the ultimate prize. First place is what you work for, and out to me, it'd be the ultimate prize. So, I don't know, but that'd be really cool anyway.
The only reason why I ask is because if that were to be the case, it'd be pretty cool not just to, have something on the trophy case, but also bring it around to school, because I know you're pretty popular as well in your area. A lot of guys like to ask you questions and stuff while you're at college.
Going back to college, good point. It's pretty tough because college it's a commuter school, so it's not very social. It's not your typical college experience, so it's kind of hard to kind of talk to people in a sense, because they're very laser focused because they have a job to work, so it's pretty tough. But a lot of my high school friends I still stay in touch with, so I think if we did win it, I think I've been talking to them, they'd be all over that. So yeah.
Well, indeed, Dan, thank you so much for coming on today, and obviously best of luck in your upcoming future. But that's going to wrap it up here from Thursday's edition of Sports Speak of Episode 8. Again, I'm Tim Moore alongside Dan. Oh, my goodness, you're going to kill me for that. Daniel Buttafuoco saying so long, as again, you've been watching Sports Speak, and we'll see you with more Sports Speak action with Eddie Kalegi on Monday. And with that being said, that will wrap things up and see you next week.